Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of React Wednesdays. Back for some more React fun. My name is TJ Van Cole. I work as a developer advocate at Progress on the Kendo React team. And with me today, as always, is Dan Wilson.
Hey, folks, I'm Dan Wilson. I work at Digital Primates, where we do enterprise React consulting. We offer the Enterprise React newsletter to keep you up to date on what's going on. We never spam, never sell your email.
And cool. And today, our special guest, our returning champion, Zain Sajjad. And hopefully, did I get your name right this time, or did I screw it up?
Yeah, you get it right. Perfect. Hey, I am Zain Sajjad, and I work as head of front-end development at Peekaboo Guru. We are the company, we are the app platform that tells you all the deals and discounts going in your town.
Very cool. So today, I think previously we had you on to talk some debugging stuff, but today we're going to dive deep into bundlers, which should be a lot of fun because I think it's a topic that I am certainly no expert on, and I think it's one that everybody wishes they knew a little bit better. So why don't you sort of like lay the groundwork for us? Like, what bundlers are we going to look at today? What should people expect? That sort of thing.
Okay, so let's just start from what we are going to do today. So we will be analyzing three top bundlers available right now in the front-end world. First one is Webpack, the most adopted one, and I feel one of the most cursed or loved. And a good competition to it, Rollup, and a newbie to the town. I wouldn't say that much new, but yeah, a comparatively new tool, that's Parcel. So all of these three bundlers are actively maintained. They all are doing great work. Their maintainers are just great people. They are contributing a lot to whatever we are developing today. So this comparison is not to tell anyone that X is bad or Y is good. It's more about analyzing that what's good at what and where it can be better useful. So we'll be starting from analyzing the features that all of these three bundlers are giving to us. And then we will dive into our live demo and do a little bit of benchmarking stuff, where we'll discuss that how much time does it take for them to develop, to build a development build, and how much time it takes to have a production build and what sort of assets they generate.
Very cool. So I'd encourage, I know I have lots of questions, and I would encourage anybody watching here too, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, to chime in with the chat. But how do you want to tackle this? Do you want to just dive right into showing this? Do you want to tackle some like higher level stuff first? What's your plan of attack here?
I would just go with a little bit of background with all of these three. And then we can start from showing up a little bit of how these are configured, and then we can dive into the features stuff, right?
Sounds good.
So perfect. So Webpack, I feel definitely Webpack is one of the oldest player in this arena. And what Webpack has done is to bring a big revolution into the bundling of website. Actually, we as a web developers have moved a long way. I mean, we started from serving simple static HTML pages, then we moved to a little bit of CSS, and then there came the time when everything, and then there is a time when everything is JavaScript. So when it came to making everything in JavaScript, the most crucial part was to deliver whatever is required to the user, rather than giving user a complete 2 MB bundle that contains whole of your app. It's better that you supply user with only the required assets. So at this point, and for this purpose, actually the role of bundlers come in. All of these bundlers, they tend to make your production builds, your final JavaScript a bit optimized and separated and chunked into a way that can serve your users better. So Webpack, as I said, is the oldest, and then we have Rollup, and then we have Parcel.js. So we'll try to analyze the features of all of these into few pieces to see that what goes, which one is better in every aspect, right? So as I said, one of the most crucial part for the front-end apps in the modern days was code splitting. We start when Angular first came out, it was more of single page application concept, and that single page application concept actually made us into the way that we started thinking of client side routing, and we were less concerned about a lot of JavaScript that we were shipping to the client side. With code splitting, what we mean is we have to split our JavaScript in a way that the JavaScript that's used widely or that is crucial is made into a single file, and then there is a separate file for, let's say, a module. Let's take an example for a better understanding. For example, we have an app that has a login arena, and then we have a public space. So the files or the JavaScript that's required for public space or public pages should not be, or other way around, the files that are required in login space should not be shipped in the public space, right? So we need to divide them in a way that when a user requests a public page, only the JavaScript and the assets required for that particular page are shipped. So for code splitting, it's let me give a little bit of overview. Recently, a team from Google did this comparison, and they analyzed all three of these bundlers, and they put up some 8 tests for all of these bundlers to pass, and we found out that most of these tests were passed by Rollup. So when it comes to code splitting, the champion and the winner is Rollup, and the major part where it struck nicely is actually splitting the code between the worker files. So you at times, if you have worked with service worker or you have worked with other workers that are available in the browser, Rollup is really great with splitting your code and updating your code that is actually being used inside those service worker stuff. So on your worker thread, not just your main JavaScript thread. And Parcel is also really great at it. Webpack has been doing wonderful since start, but again, Webpack is not that great when it comes to working out with between context type workers, and that's where actually Rollup trucks.
And if people want to follow along, I dropped the link into the chat with just so you can see for yourself on code splitting. And I'm actually curious because this is like a report card that Google puts out. So the thing about different workers actually is something that I hadn't really considered really at all. What is the advantage of, like, is it just taking your code and like saying, okay, this, I'm having a hard time understanding, like, is it taking certain code and saying this runs in a service worker and this works on, say, like the main thread, or what is it actually grading on here?
Yeah, so let me just give you a small example. So there is a code that there's a part of functionality with push notifications in browser, that when you have a push notification fired from for your app application and you want to launch a page from that push notification rather than your launching your home page, you have to execute a little bit of your code in the background, not when your web page is active. So you take that code inside service worker and you do all that stuff there. Or there are certain places where you have a lot of analytics going on, or a lot of big calculations going on in your web app, where there comes your workerlets and your web workers that allow you to keep your JavaScript thread safe and keep moving your UI while your all your heavy load is being taken care by worker threads. So it's actually something, it's good that you brought that up. So this difference between Webpack and Rollup might not be very crucial, or in fact, a little bit important for anyone developing a simple web app, right? So this comparison or this difference actually is important for people who are doing really performance incentive development, and they are much curious about doing a lot of work with web workers and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like the way you phrase that it kind of depends on what you're doing, because I think your average app probably isn't at this point reacting to like push notifications on the web, just thinking your average like rank and file thing. But it's actually this is intriguing to me because I never even thought of a bundler like this being solved at the bundler level. So I'm actually curious how that would work because it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting thing, and the teams working on on all three of these platform libraries are doing just great work. They're great people, and I mean they're doing awesome things. Perfect. So moving ahead, there is a concept of hashing. So when it comes to delivering a great user experiences, speed is one of the crucial things. So going fast, your website should load fast. It was at some point of time in past, it was just a good thing to have, but right now it's something very crucial to us. So there are researches that even bringing a little bit of milliseconds down in your web page load time can create a lot of conversions in e-commerce site, or can get you a lot of traffic and revenue ultimately. So browsers today come up with great mechanism of caching. Once a file is downloaded from a certain server with the name, and it has that particular headers attached to that, usually files are not downloaded when you visit the page again, right? So since we are developing a quite JavaScript intensive web applications, we have a lot of JavaScript shipping to the client side. Now, those JavaScript files, if are cached on the client side, can make a huge difference. So once you have visited a page A, next time you come to page A, there is no need to get you that all the JavaScript again to you again, right? But it has again a con. Once you update your JavaScript, you have to make sure that you create your JavaScript in new file name every time there is a change in your code. So when the next time user requests a page or a file, it gets the new name, and ultimately the cache it has is destroyed. This hashing mechanism is present in all of these three bundlers. But what matters is that how well they hash your files, right? So we have a hashing that actually how hashing works. And let me just explain a little bit of it. It's that JavaScript and these bundlers consider all of your files as a nodes in a graph, right? So if a.js requests b.js, and then b.js requests x CSS file, and then that CSS file requests an SVG file. So it's just a chain there, right? So what JavaScript bundlers does that we just discussed with in the previous section. So code bundling part, that when you start bundling, you see that, okay, if user requests bundle JavaScript A, it depends on B, and then B depends on CSS, and then that depends on SVG. So what it does is it bundles all of this stuff into a single file, right? Or they bundles it together, right? Let's say we have JS JSB, and JSC all together, right? And they are bundled into a single file. Or and then we have an SVG file that's referenced from these JS files, and then we have CSS file that's referenced from this file. Now the change that we had is actually happening inside our SVG file, or the change has happened into CSS file, right? That change will cause a change in JavaScript file, and that JavaScript file should have a new hash, right? So it's a nested hashing, and how your hashes are changed and how your hashes are destroyed, right? So when it comes to this, I think Parcel is doing a great job. That's what the test cases of Google said, that tooling report is saying. And the point where Rollup actually kills or surpasses both of these, Webpack and Rollup, is that it makes the hash of the file based on the final code, right? So for example, how to know that my file has changed? Exactly, I will be looking at the content of the file, what it had earlier and what it has now. What Parcel is good at, it checks for the content of the file, and that content is actually the final transpiled code. So once your whole JavaScript has gone through all of that transpiling through Babel, then the final content that's your actual JavaScript that's going to be shipped to your client, it's considered for hashing, right? So if you change any comment in your file, that's not going to generate a new hash on your build time, right? With
Because
Webpack,
it's stripped out.
yeah. So with Webpack, that's the case. So Webpack will change your hash if there is a change in comment, right? Because it's doing hashing pre-compile or pre-transpiling. And when it comes to Parcel, it does all this hashing post-transpile, right? So that's where actually Parcel is great. And beside that, I think all of these bundlers are great. Webpack is up to the mark. It has passes 8 out of 10. Well, Parcel is passing somewhere 8.5 out of 10. Rollup is 6 out of 10. But Rollup is not in that bad of a sense. It's most of that it's not that much good with assets. So this hashing does not just resides with JavaScript. Hashing is also about hashing your images, hashing your SVGs, hashing your CSS, and all that stuff. So
let's walk back to that Parcel example where you mentioned you could change a comment, and it's since it's processed post compilation or transpilation, it doesn't trigger an unnecessary cache invalidation on the browser. Can you think of other changes that might happen in code where Webpack would trigger?
Yeah. So if that one other case would be that you upgrade your transpiler. Yeah. So you change your transpiler, and that also changes the way your code has been transpiled. Your Babel version upgrades. There are something that transpile differently. So that's also the case for the final transpilation, and that's what Parcel is handling right now. So since your final code is changed, it does. It all depends on what the actual content that's to be delivered on the client side.
So if there are workloads where someone is very sensitive to changes in transpilers or comments or other sort of non-essential things, and they don't want to trigger non-essential cache invalidation, they should take a look at Parcel.
Yeah, definitely.
And I really like, I'll just plug this site, the tooling report site, because, and I dropped it in the chat if you want to check this out too, just because it's really good at not only giving like a report card, but also really explaining why they're considering certain things like good or why they're grading on it. So I'm actually learning, I'm just perusing the site, right, and learning about some things that I'd never even thought of or associated with a JavaScript bundler before. Because in my mind, I'm thinking like quite naively, right, giving the basic thing that you introduced this with. It's just taking some files as nodes and they spit them out as like production copies, and there we go. But there's actually quite a bit of complexity here that I never even thought about.
And that's what's good about these libraries and the maintainers doing all the hard work on them. I mean, they are thinking in a way advanced manner than the other number of developers are thinking right now. So with the passage of time, they are making sure that we are delivering amazing experiences to our user. I mean, this all contributes ultimately to the end user's experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I tell you, anytime something waits more than a second and a half, I'm ready to eject. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, that's the case. And that's what studies suggest, that if you just bring in your 300 milliseconds of your load time down, you can have your 10% up in your revenue.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen statistics like that, and it's pretty interesting because if you're in a competitive space, you may one of your competitive attributes might be not annoying your users.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, or your developers too, because I know, I don't know if this is a good time to transition, because I know you wanted to show some of this off, because I know development time is also a concern with some of these, right? Because sometimes it doesn't matter how good the finished product is, if it's an absolute nightmare to work with or is slow and whatnot too.
So we'll come to that in the later stages of the talk, where we'll discuss the ecosystem that has been built around these libraries and how good it is to have them on board, and for what purpose actually they are good. So yeah, that will come up, and we'll just go through it once we are done with benchmarking and the features and stuff.
Okay.
Perfect. So let's just move on. So as we discussed, it's not just about bundling up your JavaScript. We have HTML, we have CSS, we have SVGs, we have images, And we at times have binaries, especially if you have worked with machine learning sort of stuff, where you have your models and things downloading on client side, doing all that great image recognition stuff on the client side on your web browsers. You also download these binary stuff and things. So it's about that bundlers should be able to have that, you know, they have to go an extra step ahead when you are doing such a great work of hashing and code bundling and stuff, right? So if you have heard of that preload tag that allows you to load the DNS earlier before you load your actually content or something, right? Or you would have a preload your CSS and images and all that stuff, right? Let's think of that. You are creating a page and your bundler changes the hash of your image, or it changes the hash of your CSS. And that CSS is actually linked inside your HTML, right?
Okay.
At this point of time, your bundler should update that HTML file, right? Because the hash of that file and actual URL of that file has changed.
Yep.
If it doesn't work that way, that file might be missing, or you might be referencing an older file.
Yeah.
Right. So that's actually adding preload tags. That's where Parcel is not good at, where Webpack and Rollup are doing great. And you can also have generated preload tags for your scripts. And again, Parcel is not doing it right now, but they might do it once their V2 is out of beta. And Webpack and Rollup are doing it. And also, beside this, there are a few things that asset URLs, again, that thing, again, this comparison is for the people who are working heavily with workers, right? So your assets might be referenced inside your service worker, or your assets might be referenced inside your web worker, right? So once that hash or that part optimization has been occurred on your asset side, it should reflect in your service worker. It should reflect in your web workers code. So that's what Parcel is unable to do right now, and Webpack is doing. Perfect.
Gotcha. This is becoming like a puzzle. Like you just need to like pick and choose the things that you need.
That's the case. I mean, again, this decision of using a different bundler, that this decision comes up to you once in a blue moon or twice or thrice, and that's more for the people who are working extensively on doing optimizations, making sure that that the top tier, where you are making sure that your applications are optimized both from developer experience perspective and from user experience perspective. And you are just curious about developer tooling and stuff. So that's more of decision making there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then, sorry. So let's move to next part. That's actually transformation. And transformation is about converting your code into a better version of it, or the version that's supported in different browsers, a version that is optimized, a version that is more of available for all the major browsers or the browsers that you are targeting, right? So one comparison that Google did for a bit of marketing purpose, I guess, where it was that Broadly compression. Broadly is basically a compression algorithm or a compression library by Google. So they analyze if Broadly comparison can be done with any of these bundlers, and Parcel again wasn't able to do so. Well, Webpack and Rollup have their plugins. Well, most of the time, this compression stuff and generating optimized JavaScript is done by Terser plugin. We are heavily using Terser right now with Webpack, and Terser is also available with Rollup. So I don't think this thing is much of a worry right now. Well, all three of these bundlers have amazing image minification tool available, so you can just minify the images that you are shipping. One interesting case here is the dead code elimination. So one important part is to eliminate your dead code from dynamically imported modules. And all three of these bundlers are unable to do so right now. But I personally feel that this isn't something that will be very crucial for majority of the web apps. But beside that, I think Webpack and Rollup are head to head in this, and they are doing wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why dead code removal would be important. I would caution people to think about the fact that you have version control, don't you?
Yeah.
And you really shouldn't have a whole lot of dead code that you wrote in your application, should you? Now, that doesn't mean that some of the libraries and frameworks you're using wouldn't have extra capability that you're not taking advantage of, and why ship that if you can help it. I'm curious, Zain, and if this is part of what we do later, that's fine, but I'm curious what the results would be, doing some of this stripping of dead code on common modules that folks use. Take a big library like underscore. So you use what, 3 features right now, and it's got 3 million. Does it save a lot of weight? I'm not sure. I've never actually tried it, but one would think it would.
Yeah, so dead code elimination happens in all of these three bundles. It's about dead code elimination for dynamically imported modules,
which are much harder to detect, I imagine.
Yeah, that's the case. So you have a dynamically imported module, and then that module imports dynamically another module, and that chain goes on. And at that some point, that there is a chance that you might miss on something. And we need to, all of these three bundles need to figure out a great way to incorporate that dynamically imported modules in the dead code elimination part.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd even do that other than execute the code. I mean, how would you detect that? When you look at like a static import, that's obvious. You can see that's in the file, but the dynamic stuff, I think you pointed out 0 of 0 support it right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 0 bundlers support this. So it must be one of those hard problems that they'll get to when they can.
Yeah. So if you are trying to develop your own bundler, I think this can be a good motivation.
Start with this. Let us know when you're done.
Yeah. So just if you can just figure this out, you are a great person. So moving on, let's take a look at our benchmarking. I would like to have this GitHub repository here. We just had this available for you. So you can just clone this repository. It has all of three bundlers: Webpack, Rollup, and Parcel, all three available and all three integrated. So we have all of them available in a single repo, so you can analyze how good they work. It's a very small web app with a little bit of CSS, a simple React component, an image, and it's really basic. It doesn't have anything complex. It's just to give you an idea of how things work when you use all three of them. Right?
Yep, and I just dropped it in the chat. And this is something you built presumably for your own purposes of just trying to benchmark these and sort of evaluate these sort of things for yourself.
Yeah, it was the case. Actually, we were trying to optimize the delivery of our web applications. And suddenly someone had this idea that we should try out all these new bundlers and see if we can make a good impact. And we played around a lot with Webpack configurations. And then someone said, okay, let's just try and move around in this bundlers arena. And we just figured out that we are doing good. And Webpack is, again, by far better for us. So we'll just see into the results, and that would be nice, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very curious. Do you crown like one clear winner? Is this, or is it way more complicated?
One clear winner thing, I think what I figured out is if you are working with any library, I think the best thing would be Rollup. And if you are working with a complete application, I think Webpack is something that you should look into. Well, all of these do come up with a great way to bootstrap your application. So if you are starting new, it's not that tough to set up any of these. But as your application grows into the size and in the number of modules, things might complicate. You might need new configurations. You might need new plugins and stuff. So we just did a basic stuff to compare. and we'll just dive into it. So Parcel doesn't has a lot of configuration stuff. That's good about it. They say that we are zero config web bundler. You don't have to configure anything. You just have to give your file and you are done.
Wait,
So
could you bump up your font size for VS Code just a little bit to make this a little easier to see?
is it
Oh, yeah,
better now?
that's perfect right there. Yep.
Cool. So there it is. So we have these tasks available for all of these. Start with Webpack and build with Webpack. We have start with Rollup and build with Rollup, and we have start with Parcel and build with Parcel.
Yep.
Right. So, well, let's dive into some configuration part. We'll start from Webpack. So we divided basically our Webpack configurations into 3 parts, and we just added a bit of loaders for our JavaScript, some Babel loader thing, CSS loaders to load our CSS, and a file loader to load our font files and stuff, an image loader or URL loader for certain files extensions, and HTML loader. So we have these available for, you need to configure these loaders with Webpack, especially with Webpack 4, to make sure that you are getting your files parsed or moved or parsed through the right loader. Perfect. So, and then we have this configuration for development environment where we tell our Webpack that our service entry points are these 2. We have these output files. You don't have to dive in much into it. It's just HMR or module replacement plugin, Webpack HTML plugin that tells Webpack from in which HTML it has to make changes, right? So there it is, and then you have webpack.prod there, right? So there comes the good thing. You have this cursor plugin that we talked about a little while ago, and you apply this cursor plugin during minimization. It has these super sophisticated configurations that you might be interested in or you might not be interested in, and you can just do this as well. But these are the configuration that we usually use for our web application. Well, then there is something that's called output section, and this output section allows you to identify the name of the files that will be generated. So you have this chunk hash here. That's the hashing that's being generated by Webpack, the name of the file, and then hash, and then .js. You have these optimization, a little bit of options available, how you want to split your chunks, how much async request maximum at the time should occur. For example, user is requesting for page A, how many JavaScript should it be requesting at the same time, and how many initial requests you want, and minimum chunks, and minimum size of a chunk, and all that configuration of splitting chunk. Again, these all are optional. If you want to avoid them, you can, but it's always good to play around with them and see how it affects the overall user experience of your site. So I would highly recommend, if you have some good time available, this is a great thing to play around. Just go out there, learn a little bit, and just think about how good, just analyze what number of JavaScripts are being downloaded when your client or user is requesting certain page, and you will just find out a real great analysis from about what you can do good.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to be curious about as you go through some of these other ones too is which of these bundlers is sort of the easiest to use in terms of having not all that much configuration and like intelligent defaults as well. Because one thing I found, and I'm most familiar with Webpack, but really with all these bundlers, for me, and I'm probably speaking more for the average developer that hasn't researched this heavily, is that these things can be quite overwhelming. There's a lot going on, right? These are just configuration files, and you're in the hundreds of lines of code here. And so knowing what like minify, remove empty, attributes, like some of these settings, like keeping track of all of these is kind of hard. And so I always look to tools that are like going to mostly do what I want, and then still have that ability to customize where I need to, but Usually I want my bundler to just solve as much of the problem for me automatically as possible.
Yeah. So all of these come up with zero configuration. So if you want to use either of them, you can do with zero configuration as well.
Okay.
What matters is when you add up functionality. For example, you want to add up image minification.
Yeah.
You want to add up a better compression plugin. You want to add up a better way to optimize your HTML, right? So you want your hashes to be done with any smart algorithm. So that's where all of this comes in, right? So we are just trying to go to extremes, but yeah, everything is simpler, and there are really smart defaults with coming with all of these bundlers, and you can utilize them right away as well. This is just to give you a clear and a broad picture and an in-depth analysis of what goes around in all of these.
Gotcha.
So we'll just move towards web rollups configuration. We just had that Webpack thing, or we can have, well, let's just have this rollup configuration. Can have, again, we have this divided into basic, then development, and then production configuration. So we have these a few plugins available. We were loading an SVG image, so we had to include that plugin for loading SVGs. We were using CSS, so we had to add up rollup plugin styles to import our CSS. We have HTML plugin to include HTML, and then we have JSON plugin to include our JSON file. So these are the basic plugins integration that you require when you are integrating Rollup. We have done this all into a base file, and then we have a development file that includes the plugin for live reload and image loading as well. And it tells the Rollup about the development environment. It just gives that HTML file reference, the port, and the host and stuff. And then in production side, we don't have that live reload thing, but we have Cursor plugin here, as you can see. And here we are not doing any sophisticated configurations of Cursor. So we are just using the basic configurations from Cursor.
I do like the syntax here, like the plugins, the way you do that. That feels a lot more just terse and simple than with Webpack.
This is the first I've seen Rollup, so I'm happy to take a look at this.
Yeah, cool. So we have added this visualizer plugin here as well that allows you to see the how it's while to have a good loader and stuff, and how much time it is taking up during the build. We have integrated that into production side, not in development part. Also, we have this file size plugin that tells us that what are the actual file sizes of our ultimate files that are going to be shipped, production files, right? And as mentioned, we don't have much of a configuration thing for Parcel. So for Parcel, you just have these two tasks, and you are good.
Really? So
Yeah.
so wait a second. So then, if you did want to configure Parcel, because presumably there are some things you might want to change, what would you do in that case?
Yeah. So with Parcel V1, it was great. I mean, you want to add some plugin of Parcel, you just add that as a developer dev dependency, and you are done.
Wow.
Parcel will figure that out, and it will just do all the magic for you. With Parcel V2, at some point when your application grows, and when you are using these bundlers at scale, you require these configurations. You need them. And at that point of time, your bundler should support them. So with Parcel V2, they have a mechanism for configuration, but those configurations were not, those configurations were for the cases that are much more sophisticated. And I just tried to omit that part because that doesn't belong to this application that we are developing right now. But again, that configuration thing is available with Parcel V2. That wasn't there with Parcel V1.
Okay.
So, and their V2 is still in beta.
Makes sense. I do appreciate the attempt to get away with no configuration whatsoever.
I think that's that's a hard feature to develop, because you've got to build opinions and then make sure they're the right ones, of course. So good job for Devin for working through that. But I think the other thing is that if I've got a application and I'd like to bundle it or streamline it somehow, but I'm not 100% bought in on this, like say we need it, but we really don't. If I have a lot of configuration options to work through, I may not get around to this, but zero config, I got time for that.
That's great. So let's just move into something, some benchmarking part, and I'll show you that how all of these three work. Uh,
Yep,
so
got
there we
it
go.
up there.
Yeah. Is it big enough?
Yeah, I think
so.
that's
Yeah,
good.
that's good.
Perfect. So let's start, and we'll do with a yarn start colon webpack. So this is going to start a webpack server with hot module reloading and all the configurations we had with webpack for development side. And it has started. There you go. And it says the time it took was around 1.8 milliseconds,
Yep.
and it is ready, is compiled successfully, and it is now serving on the browser.
So when you say, so are you strictly measuring the amount of time for it to do all of its sort of benchmarking specifically there, like, or just like get up and running essentially?
It was just for up and running. I mean, it's not that we are diving into much into it. As I just mentioned, it's a very simple app, and just trying to benchmark on a very low level. And then obviously you can have a very sophisticated app. And at that point, when you have a sophisticated app, a large scale application, then you need a lot of plugins as well. You
Yeah.
have to have all of that, big booming size of plugins to load X file and Y file and that and that, and for chunks as well, and for bundling as well. And so in that stuff.
Actually, what's doing the measuring there? Is that time, is that built into Webpack, or is that something you added to actually grab that?
Nah, that's built into Webpack actually.
That's convenient.
Yeah. So we'll just do the same for Rollup and see how it goes.
So it looks like already more than 1.8 seconds.
Yeah. So length of undefined. What's going on there? Demo board is not happy with me.
It has to happen. It must.
Yeah.
It had to happen. Well, just the
Try the good old fashioned, like run it again and see if it works. That's
I just see if that.
Yeah, it looked like some sort of TypeScript error, maybe.
Yeah, it's complaining about the size of something.
CSS is something. So styles plugin is doing something well.
Maybe if you don't have the time, I'm sure you've run this before. Is like roughly
Yeah.
how long does it take for this with these settings?
So I can just share this stuff. Just give me a second. There you go.
Yeah, I'm just sort of curious roughly how much time.
So let me just share my screen, browser screen. I have this thing over.
My significant other, she hears about JavaScript bundlers and she's just has to hear more.
She's in IT, right?
Yeah, no, she does JavaScript development, so I'm only kind of kidding.
Great. So there are benchmarks. So last time when I ran it for dev, it was around 1300 milliseconds for Webpack. It was around 5500 milliseconds for Rollup and 3300 milliseconds for Parcel.
Interesting.
And,
yeah, and
that's for what again?
development. Yeah.
So from 0 to your first build, that's how long it takes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So obviously there's a clear winner, but none of these are super crazy, assuming that the reload speeds are adequate. It looks like that's maybe the next line.
Mm-hmm. So reload speed is something that's more of an interest for developers, and Webpack does amazing job there. So it has the 38 milliseconds, and all others are above 100 milliseconds.
Yeah, this
and in fact is the slowest.
This is kind of crazy to me because that first line, like I said, if it takes 1 second, 5 seconds, it's just the first time it's coming up. So 1 second is nice, but I'd be willing to wait 5 seconds. That's not a showstopper. But that reload speed is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I'd actually be curious. Like, do you know why Webpack is this fast and the other ones are slow? Like, is this something that they've just heavily optimized, or because that's like it's that's a pretty huge gap and a pretty clear advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Webpack has put lots and lots of effort in all the research that they are doing. So they are coming up with new theories, new ideas, doing things the right way. They have a great caching mechanism in place that allows them to monitor that only they have to reload the files that are actually changed. So, I mean, they are doing a lot of research on this, and that these are the results of those research.
I'm actually curious, are these bundlers all written in JavaScript, or is some of this potentially in the actual architecture of how they're written?
We'll move in the later stages. We'll discuss about packs. That's actually developed with Rust, but most of all of these three Java bundlers, they are developed with JavaScript.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking maybe like Webpack was built with something fancy to get those gains, but that's pretty cool that they're doing that with JavaScript.
Yeah. So then there is a release build time when you develop when you build a production app. So again, Webpack is a clear winner here, and all other are taking a little bit of more time. So this can be crucial for a large scale application here, and especially when you have limited resources in your CI/CD environment, and you want to have faster build times. Webpack is great at that.
It's fair to say that because Parcel 2 is in beta, they may be optimizing late in the game.
Yeah.
Their times are mid-pack on about everything, and they don't seem too crazy, but they may improve some stuff as they go.
Yeah, they will. We hope. So we also analyzed, again, self-promotion, a little bit of it. I maintain a library, React Facebook Pixel, that allows you to integrate Facebook's Pixel into your React app. And I just experimented all of three bundlers with that as well. So you can have a bundler comparison branch in our React Facebook Pixel package. And you can see, you can also do that benchmarking there. And library release, again, where since we were working on library release, we didn't have much of dev dependencies and peer dependencies. You see that Parcel is doing great when compiling the library file because it has lesser number of JavaScript to actually convert and parse.
Interesting.
Yeah. So next up is the bundle size, the complete bundle size of our application is JavaScript. And when it comes to bundle size, as you can see, Rollup is better, but it's not that you will have a big booming significant difference between all three of them. As for library, it's around 50% of the difference, but for applications, it's not that big of a difference there.
Why is that?
I'm not pretty much sure about this, but it's more like that Webpack has that better bundling mechanism for CommonJS bundles.
Yeah. So in the app release, was that app one that you control, or is that like
Yeah. The demo app that didn't work, right?
Okay, so you have a demo app and you use the app release, and you have a library and you use library release. So these are your timings on your code.
Yeah, exactly. That's done on my system.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously the app releases are all neck and neck, but I'm surprised to see the library difference the way that it is. And if someone was concerned with file size as their optimizer, they may be well suited to trying all of these and just see if it's really good at whatever they did in their library.
Yeah, it's great. And for the library developers, I personally feel you should try out Parcel and Rollup. They are great tools for this.
Yeah, actually, we had a question came in that I'm curious how much changes if you are building, like, say, a library for NPM versus an individual app, and do the considerations then sort of change in that sort of thing, in that sort of situation?
Yeah, for library thing, there is lesser JavaScript as compared to your application. And you are more concerned about, so you can have your different output files. You can have your ESM, CommonJS, and your module.js file. So that's a bit of different mindset. And when it comes to application bundling, that's a little different mindset. And again, the thing I mentioned was that Parcel and Rollup are doing great when it comes to lesser amount of JavaScript, and you have a defined set of output formats. So I personally feel for library, Parcel and Rollup are doing good. And when it comes to application, there's nothing better than Webpack.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I sort of agree with your point that in an app situation, 2 or 3K is really negligible, right? In the grand scheme of things, no one's really going to notice. But if you're developing like a little utility library, 2 or 3K kind of matters because that number is going to add up across everybody distributing it and
Yeah.
being able to spit things out in the right formats and such. Those things, there's some different considerations at play.
Yeah.
And going back
That's
to
it.
something you mentioned earlier, Zane, is that, the experience is a big deal. Well, the library experience is what are you asking your library consumers to do? And if it's add more bloat to their app, you better have a super good library. But if you can trim it up like you did in your example, it's a much lighter weight ask, pun intended.
Yeah. So again, that's why I said. I mean, as when said came, there is a big difference of mindset when it comes to library development. You are bloating size of the application of end users, and you have to be very curious, very cautious about that.
So speaking of curious, so imagine that, our millions of listeners are right now trying to decide which one of these to try out. Can you kind of just discuss the complexity required to get something
Yeah.
functional with each one?
So complexity isn't there to begin with, right? Webpack is already shipped with Create React app. So if you are using your application is built upon CRA, Webpack is already there. Under the hood, it's using Webpack, and mark my words, they are using one hell of a sophisticated configurations of Webpack, and nobody knows about it. So once you eject out of CRA, you'll find out that there is a hell lot of amount of plugins that are going through in there to make your application PWA, to have your service worker in place, to have your CSS optimizations and stuff, and not module loading and things. So CRA is already using Webpack. If your application is based on CRA, Webpack is already there for you, and all of these three come with zero configuration. You can start right away. No worries with that. But the point is that for developing a good application, you have to figure out the way that suits your application better. So if you are loading a lot of fonts, you're not using Google Fonts and you want to load fonts, for Webpack, you have to have a separate file loader that does all the good work of hashing and bundling and chunks and all stuff for you. And these plugins have their own benefits. It's not just that they bring that configuration complexity. This configuration complexity has its output, and that output is actually having a better user experience ultimately. So I personally feel that it's something that one should enjoy a little. And coming back to your question, what should one adopt? Again, if you are a library developer, Rollup and Parcel should try that. But if you are developing a medium scale or large scale web application, I would highly recommend that you start with Webpack, because Webpack has the tools available that you are going to need. You are going to, you will have their need in might be next few months, but you will find out that Webpack has everything available. The next part that I wanted to discuss was the plugin and the ecosystem that's built around these libraries. And for Webpack, they have a lot of plugins available that are officially supported. For Rollup, plugins are there for loading certain formats of file, but many of them are not official. Number one, a number of them are stale. So if there is something new you want to do, you need to figure that out yourself, or you need to find out yet another plugin. So with Webpack, ecosystem is big, ecosystem is good, and you will find out most of the things that you need, especially for application developers. For Parcel, they have the plugin repository, and they are bringing in new plugin integration mechanism into Parcel v2, and again, that's gonna make a difference.
So I think I would just encourage Chad, if you have any questions, to get them in. We've got a few more minutes here today. I know one that came in that I'm sort of curious about as well is about Snowpack. And also, I might even broaden this question a little bit, because it feels like every day now I'm hearing about some new like bundler either like tool, plugin, like it's like the hip thing to be doing. Like everybody's building one of these things. So I'm curious if you have like a short list of like things we might want to just roughly be aware of or care about too.
Yeah. So again, Snowpack is a wonderful tool. I have heard of it a lot. I have been experimenting with it a little bit, and they are making good noise. They are doing a great work, and I personally feel that Snowpack is something one should give a try. I haven't done any benchmarking, so I am not in the position to recommend or just speak on that part. But yeah, Snowpack is good as per the benchmarking they have done. Their upfront development time is great, and they feel that they have done something better than Webpack. So it's definitely something that one should give shot to.
And is it basically like a replacement for Webpack? Like you would use Snowpack instead of? Okay.
That's the case. That's
And
What would happen if you just added all these bundlers to the same code in a sequence?
I just did with that sample app actually. I never used that. So that doesn't work. So
another question
White.
about Vite, which is another one I throw that in the bucket of ones I've heard of but don't really understand also.
Yeah, they get 12 points for having an extremely long and detailed README.
Oh, nice.
And they also carefully point out that Vite is actually pronounced, well, however you pronounce /VIT/, but it's the French word for fast.
So it's saying pronounced Vite.
My French is as good as my Urdu, my friend, so I won't try to.
Chat is helping us out, though, I think.
Oh, chat, way to go.
Yeah, Vite.
Play of the game.
So I haven't. I just heard of it right now in with your comment. So yeah, I'll try it out.
I know a lot of these are like experimenting with ES modules. I know a lot of these tools are related around that, and I know for me personally, it's not something I've experimented with quite yet. So I'm just sort of in the curious stage right now.
Yeah. So I will definitely try Vite and Snowpack and Pax that's built on Rust, and then there is Boe that's actually built upon Java. That Pax is actually built upon, I guess. Yeah.
Did you say Pax? Like, is it like PACKS or
AX? Let me just paste this here.
Yeah. I'm horrible with these names. Oh, PAX. Okay. I'll drop the link in chat.
Yeah, and there it is, your another one. Poi.js.org.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Poi. I swear the people that name these things.
Yeah. The people are trying out the different things.
Cache invalidation and naming things, and there's
X and Poi. Here, this is where we're at.
So yeah, these are a few extra bundlers that you could try. I mean, it's not about choosing them for your next application. It's about getting the good ideas from them. So you can learn a lot of things diving into the code of these applications. These are really sophisticated. This actually bundling is one of the most interesting and complex part of front-end development. So if you are someone who wants to dive into graphs, who wants to dive into complex logics, bundlers are the place for you. I mean, you should dive into it, and mark my words, you'd really enjoy it. I did, and I'm super happy with it. What I did, actually diving into code of the Webpack, and but just out of curiosity, how it's going inside. I mean, it's a big thing. You have a graph. You have to make sure your files are updated, your hashes are updated, and all that diffing, live reload, and stuff. A lot of things are going on. You have a mechanism to support number of plugins and things. That's a huge thing. So once you dive into these sort of code bases, you'll definitely learn thing or two. Even if you dive for an hour or two, you'll get out of it with something new. And that's where the beauty of bundlers lie.
Yeah, it's funny because people always complain they don't learn much from to-do apps, but then there's all this code on your device you can read through if you like, and it's written by people who are trying to solve interesting problems the right way. So there's definitely something to learn.
Yeah.
Well, Zane, this has been really awesome. I've definitely learned a few things. Is there anything that we haven't got to that you feel like we need to cover, or any other resources that we haven't dropped quite yet?
No, I guess we are good.
Well, cool. I'm going to drop in a few of the links just because some things that people are just dropping in and are curious, some of the links that we've talked about earlier. So the sort of reporting tool from Google that's out there. I'm also going to redrop the link. I got to find it here again, to your write up on the benchmarking as well. So people should check that out as well. That's a good summary of what we talked about. And Zane, I think one thing we like to wrap up with is any sort of like just picks or things that you want to plug at the end. And I'm also curious if people want to like have any other questions, want to follow you, what's the best place to do that also?
Well, so you can follow me on Twitter. It's Zain Sajjad 93. That's my handle. And I would definitely recommend all of the users that are watching us from South Asian region. It's a good time to shop things. It's that time of the year with lots and lots of deals. And you should definitely check out peekaboo.guru. We have tons and tons of an amount of deals coming for you. And it's a great time to shop.
Very cool. I found the link to it, peekaboo.guru. So I will drop that in as well. Dan, you got plugs?
Yeah, I could always plug the newsletter again, but I'd also say this weekend, I believe, is the cross-platform summit by Geekle. Their site seems to be being a little quirky right now, but one of our guys, the founder of our company, Mike Labriola, is going to be presenting on React Native, and they've got topics of all types of React Native topics and some Flutter topics as well. I think they have 2 tracks, and one of them's free, so it's definitely worth a look. We hope to see you there. They said there's about 10,000 people registered, so it should be a pretty good time.
Yeah, and I got the link to the newsletter, and I'm just going to drop in the link to that event as well. Yeah, the website's loading a little slow for me, but the link's in there if people want to check that out later. And I'll just plug React Wednesdays. I'm going to grab the link for this as well, just because we've got some pretty awesome guests lined up for the next few weeks as well. So we'll be talking with Julian, and Dan. I don't know if you want me to take a stab at this.
You're Dutch. You should have this.
So I'm going to paste it in the chat here. So that's, maybe we have some people that do pronunciation better than me here. Gungreep? No. I'm gonna make him do it for me next week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure he's super good at it.
One of the people behind the underscore project actually just worked on like splitting underscore up. So I'm very curious to talk to him. So we'll have him on next week. So definitely worth checking that out.
I'm going with Gongreep. I think that's the best way to go for now. So let's place our bets next week. We'll get schooled and be smarter at the end of it.
I feel like there's some nuance to that last syllable though. Like it's like you've got to like either like roll that R or like, I don't know. It can't be that simple.
Zane, what's your guess? Fair enough. What else you got, TJ?
That's it. Thanks, Zane. This was really awesome. I enjoyed learning about bundlers. Check out React Wednesdays, and everybody make sure to join us next week, every Wednesday, same time.
Great. So, have a good one, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Zane.